The cowboy wanted a virgin bride, but froze when she taught him the first night. Luke Henderson had lived on the wide, open land of Wyoming for as long as he could remember. His ranch stretched across rolling hills, soft green fields, and long dirt roads that curved like gentle lines drawn by nature itself. Every morning he woke before the sun, slipping into his boots while the sky was still a deep blue. He would step outside to the cool air, listening to the quiet world slowly waking up around him. It was a peaceful life, calm, steady, and honest. But it was also a lonely one. Luke wasn't the kind of man who spoke much. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and strong from years of ranch work, but his face softened whenever he looked at the animals under his care. He treated his horses with patience, his cattle with responsibility, and the land with the quiet respect passed down from his parents. He had lost them years ago when he had still been young, and since then the ranch had been both his duty and his companion. People in town respected him. They greeted him kindly, admired his hardworking nature, and trusted his steady presence. But they also knew he lived a life of solitude. He rarely attended social events, and when he did, he stayed near the edges, calm and quiet, watching more than speaking. He was good with work, not as good with words. As Luke entered his mid-30s, something inside him began to shift. He would sit on the wooden porch of his home after a long day, watching the sun paint golden colors across the sky. The beauty was comforting, but also a reminder that something was missing. He wanted a family. He wanted laughter inside his home, someone to share meals with, someone to talk to before falling asleep. He wanted warmth, not just from the sun, but from another person. He had tried dating a few times in the past, but the relationships never went far. He often felt out of place, like the modern world moved too fast and spoke in languages he didn't fully understand. He valued honesty, calmness, and simplicity, qualities he didn't always find in the crowded places where people usually met. He wanted something genuine. Someone who didn't bring games, drama, or complicated stories. Someone who could fit into his peaceful life without turning it upside down. That was when he met Emily Carter. Emily had arrived in town only a few months earlier. She was a 24-year-old schoolteacher who had taken a position at the small elementary school near the church. She was gentle-spoken, soft-hearted, and carried a calm energy that made people instantly feel comfortable around her. She was new to the town, new to the rhythm of rural life, but she adapted quickly, finding small joys in simple things, chatting with local mothers at the market, reading beside the lake, and exploring the quiet countryside. The first time Luke saw her, she was lifting a box of books onto a table during a church fundraiser. She wasn't struggling, but the box was clearly heavy. Luke walked over without announcing himself. With a simple nod, he gently took the box from her hands and placed it where she had been trying to set it. Emily blinked in surprise, then gave him a warm, grateful smile. "Thank you," she said. He nodded again, a bit shy under her bright eyes. "Anytime." They didn't talk much that day, only a few short exchanges, but something about her stayed in his mind long after he drove back to the ranch. Perhaps it was the way she smiled with sincerity instead of polite formality. Or maybe the way she carried herself, quietly, respectfully, like someone who appreciated simple kindness. In the weeks that followed, they crossed paths more often. Sometimes at the grocery store, sometimes at the post office, and sometimes near the church where Emily volunteered. Their conversations were never long, but they grew a little more comfortable each time. "How's school going?" Luke would ask. "The children are sweet," Emily would reply with a gentle laugh. "They test my patience, but they do it with love." Luke admired that about her. She wasn't dramatic, loud, or demanding. She had a calm strength, the type that didn't try to take space but naturally filled it. Soon, Luke found himself making small excuses to go into town more often. Normally, he would shop once a week, sometimes even once every 2 weeks. But now, he stopped by the grocery store more frequently, always hoping he might see her. When he did, Emily always greeted him with that warm smile that made his heart feel lighter. One afternoon, when Emily was choosing apples in the fresh produce section, Luke gathered enough courage to strike up a longer conversation. "These are good this week," he said awkwardly, picking up an apple and examining it like he knew something special about fruit. Emily laughed softly. "Are they? You would know better than me." He felt his ears warm. "I buy them sometimes." She smiled, kindly saving him from his embarrassment. "I like that you cook for yourself. That's a nice quality." He didn't know whether she meant it or was simply being polite, but the words stayed with him. As their interactions grew more frequent, people in town began to notice. The older ladies whispered knowingly. The church mothers exchanged glances. Even the shopkeeper raised an eyebrow once when Luke and Emily walked out of the store at the same time, both smiling shyly. Luke eventually asked Emily if she'd like to join him for coffee at the little diner on Main Street. He asked carefully, almost hesitantly, worried she might decline. But Emily said yes with an easy grace. Their first date, if it could be called that, was simple. 2 cups of coffee, a slice of pie, and soft conversation. Emily asked about ranching, curious about his daily life. Luke discovered she cared deeply about her students and loved reading. She admired nature, quiet evenings, and homemade food. Everything she said painted her as the type of woman he had always imagined starting a life with, honest, calm, thoughtful. It didn't take long for Luke to start imagining a future with her. He didn't dream of grand adventures or fancy living. He dreamed of shared breakfasts, gentle mornings, and evenings on the porch swing. Emily felt like peace, like the missing part of the life he'd been building. What attracted him most was her kindness. She listened when he spoke, even when his sentences came slowly. She didn't judge his simplicity or his quiet nature. She didn't push him to change or become someone else. She just accepted him as he was. But Luke also noticed something else about her, a natural innocence. Not childish or unaware, but pure in the sense that she approached life with sincerity and trust. She wasn't hardened by heartbreak or weighed down by complicated past relationships. She seemed untouched by the things that often make people guarded or cynical. This touched Luke deeply. He had always hoped to marry someone who shared his values, honesty, modesty, steadiness. Someone who wasn't shaped by chaos or past wounds. He didn't know exactly why this mattered so much to him, but it did. As their courtship continued, it stayed within the boundaries of gentle tradition. Luke walked her home after church events. They sat on her porch and talked until the sky darkened. They shared meals occasionally, often simple dishes Emily cooked herself. The more Luke learned about her, the more certain he became. Emily, on the other hand, was slowly falling for Luke's quiet charm. His silence never felt heavy, it felt safe. His presence made her feel protected without feeling controlled. She admired his thoughtfulness, how he always opened doors, carried heavy things without being asked, and listened with genuine interest when she spoke. But she also sensed a distance in him. Not emotional distance, but a kind of uncertainty. He never spoke about relationships, dreams, or plans beyond daily work. Emily wondered if he simply wasn't ready to express himself yet. The truth was, Luke was ready, he just didn't know how to say it. After months of gentle courtship, Luke realized he didn't want to waste more time. The more he pictured the future, the more he saw Emily in every part of it. So one quiet evening, under the soft glow of the porch light, he asked her to marry him. His voice trembled just a little as he spoke. Emily was surprised, but pleasantly. She looked into his eyes and saw sincerity, the kind that made her trust him without question. She said yes with a warm smile and a soft hand placed over his. Their engagement was short and simple. Luke didn't want a long wait, and Emily didn't see any reason to delay. She cared for him, believed in his steady nature, and felt safe with him. The small wedding took place in the backyard of Luke's ranch, under the open sky and surrounded by close friends and neighbors. It wasn't grand, but it was heartfelt. When Emily walked toward him in her modest white dress, Luke felt something shift inside, a mix of joy, relief, and wonder. This was the life he had dreamed of, a gentle wife, a calm home, a new beginning. He believed Emily needed him, his strength, his guidance, his experience. He imagined teaching her what married life meant, showing her how to build a home, how to grow a family, how to fit into the quiet rhythm of ranch life. What he didn't know, what he hadn't prepared himself for, was that Emily had her own quiet strength. A strength that would one day meet his expectations and gently turn them in a direction he never saw coming. For now, however, Luke simply held her hand during the reception, grateful for the love she had given him. And Emily, glowing with happiness, felt ready to begin her new life with the man who had captured her heart not through grand gestures, but through steady kindness. They both believed they understood each other completely. But their first night as husband and wife would reveal a truth they hadn't expected, a truth that would test their assumptions, shake their confidence, and ultimately teach them more about intimacy, communication, and love than either had imagined. Luke and Emily's life after the wedding began with a gentle sense of excitement, the kind that warms the air even when nothing dramatic happens. Their small honeymoon was simple: a drive through the mountains, a picnic near a clear river, and quiet conversation that stretched for hours. Luke felt comfortable around Emily in a way he had never felt with anyone before. She had a kindness that softened every moment, and her laughter seemed to brighten even the most ordinary things. When they returned to the ranch, married life began with a peaceful rhythm. Luke would wake early as always, but now he brewed an extra cup of coffee for Emily. She often woke up just as he was about to leave for the barn, still sleepy-eyed but smiling gently. Sometimes, she would walk with him to the edge of the field before returning to prepare breakfast. Other times, she stayed inside reading or planning her lessons for the school. Emily was quick to find her role in the ranch household. She wasn't raised on a farm, but she approached everything with curiosity instead of fear. She learned how to collect eggs, how to feed the chickens, and even how to help Luke with simple tasks like sorting tools in the barn. Luke admired her willingness to learn. He liked the idea of teaching her, guiding her, and showing her the life he had known for years. But what Luke didn't realize was that Emily wasn't following him because she needed direction. She was following him because she wanted to understand the man she had married. From the beginning, she saw that Luke was kind but guarded. He was strong but gentle. He was thoughtful, yet sometimes uncertain in ways he tried to hide. Emily sensed all of this with her quiet intuition, and she wanted to know him deeply, not just the version of him he presented to the world. Their conversations grew longer as they settled into marriage. At dinner, Emily would tell him stories about her students: the child who always colored outside the lines, the one who always asked questions, the shy one who took weeks to speak up. Luke listened with genuine interest, even smiling at her light-hearted storytelling. Emily, in return, asked about the ranch and the horses and the routines he followed so carefully. But each time she tried to ask something deeper about his feelings or his past, Luke would gently steer the conversation back to safer topics: weather, chores, daily tasks. He didn't do it intentionally to avoid her. It was simply the way he had lived for years. He didn't know how to express himself emotionally, and because Emily was patient, he never felt pressured. Still, she noticed. When they spent evenings together on the porch, watching the sky shift colors, Emily would lean her head against Luke's shoulder. Luke liked these moments more than he knew how to say. But whenever the quiet stretched too long, Emily would attempt to ask something soft and meaningful. "What made you want to live here your whole life?" Not because he didn't trust her, but because no one had ever asked him such personal questions before. His life had been built on work, not reflection, so he would answer in simple sentences, never giving more than what felt safe. Emily didn't push him. She understood that trust wasn't something Luke gave easily, even to someone he loved. She simply listened, spoke gently, and gave him time. Still, as weeks passed, they both began sensing something beneath the surface, a space between them that wasn't made of distance, but of unspoken expectations. Luke believed he understood what Emily wanted in a husband: steadiness, safety, honesty. He felt proud to give her that. But he also believed Emily was delicate, gentle, and inexperienced in ways that required him to lead their marriage, to guide her through every step. He assumed she would rely on him to show her how things worked, from ranch chores to emotional closeness. He thought she would wait quietly for him to teach her what he believed a husband was supposed to teach. Emily noticed his assumptions long before he ever voiced them. She could see it in the way he carefully explained simple chores, in the way he guided her hand when she didn't need as much help as he thought, and in the way he hesitated whenever she suggested something slightly new. She didn't mind his protectiveness. It came from a place of love, but she also wanted him to see that she wasn't fragile. She had grown up taking care of younger siblings, working part-time jobs through school, and managing her life with independence. She had moved to a new town alone, built a career, and created a peaceful life for herself before ever meeting Luke. Emily wasn't weak, she was simply gentle, and gentleness, she believed, was a strength of its own. Their differing ideas slowly revealed themselves during small moments. One afternoon, Emily suggested rearranging the furniture in the living room to make the space cozier. Luke looked surprised. "It's been this way for years," he said. "It works fine." Emily smiled patiently. I know, but maybe it could feel even nicer. We could try it and change it back if you don't like it. Luke hesitated, then nodded. But as they moved furniture together, his movements seemed stiff, almost nervous. Emily realized that change, even small change, unsettled him. He liked predictability. He liked knowing what came next. And he liked believing he was the one guiding their shared life. Another time, Emily tried cooking a new recipe she found in a magazine. When she mentioned wanting to try something different, Luke's eyebrows lifted slightly, as if he wasn't sure how he felt about it. But when Emily served the meal, he ate quietly, then told her it was good, even though his expression said he wasn't used to new flavors. Emily didn't take it personally. She simply realized that Luke needed gentle transitions, not sudden ones. She learned to introduce new ideas slowly, not because she doubted herself, but because she wanted him to feel comfortable. But there were moments when Emily's intuition surprised Luke completely. Once, after a long day of ranch work, Luke came inside with tired eyes and stiff shoulders. Emily noticed. She didn't ask what was wrong. She simply placed a warm cup of tea in his hands, sat beside him on the porch, and waited quietly. Luke relaxed immediately, grateful for the silence and companionship. When she gently asked, "Was it a hard day?" he found himself speaking more openly than he expected. He explained the challenges he faced with the cattle, the unexpected problems with the fence line, and the worry that he wouldn't finish everything before a change in weather. Emily listened, her expression soft and understanding. She didn't interrupt. She didn't offer quick solutions. She simply made him feel heard. And in that moment, Luke realized something. She might be quiet, but she was emotionally perceptive in ways he was. This observation both comforted and unsettled him. Comforted because he felt understood. Unsettled because he wasn't sure how to meet her at the same emotional depth. He wanted to be a strong husband, the one who led, decided, and taught. But Emily had her own wisdom, her own calm strength. She didn't wait for him to guide her through life. She met him with equal grace, equal patience, and equal intuition. This was something Luke hadn't expected. As their marriage settled into a steady rhythm, the unspoken assumptions grew. Luke imagined Emily to be inexperienced about many parts of married life. He believed he would need to be the one to explain things, teach things, and lead the way through the delicate areas of their relationship. Emily, however, had done her own quiet learning long before she married, reading, researching, and preparing herself to be a thoughtful and supportive partner. She didn't bring worldly experience, but she brought emotional understanding, patience, and maturity. Luke didn't know this yet. Emily could sense Luke's expectations. She didn't judge him for them. She understood they came from the way he had been raised, the way his father and grandfather had lived, believing men should lead and women should follow. But Emily believed marriage was a partnership, not a hierarchy. She believed both people guided each other, sometimes one led, sometimes the other. Balance, she thought, was the heart of harmony. Still, she didn't challenge Luke directly. She knew he wasn't ready for that conversation, not yet. Instead, she let time reveal their differences naturally. Their wedding night had been simple and quiet, marked by tenderness but also by a noticeable caution from Luke. Emily had sensed his nervousness but didn't ask about it then. She wanted to give him space. She believed trust would grow slowly, like flowers in a garden. Luke believed Emily was shy, untouched by deeper forms of intimacy. But he didn't realize that while she lacked physical experience, she possessed emotional readiness, a readiness that Luke didn't yet have but thought he was expected to have. Emily sensed this, too. The more they lived together, the more she noticed small moments of hesitation in him, not about daily chores or decisions, but about emotional closeness. Luke was comfortable with silence, physical presence, and shared routines. But when it came to deeper connection, he sometimes froze, unsure of how to express himself or what steps to take. Emily was patient, but she knew that sooner or later they would need to talk about the tender parts of marriage, the trust, the closeness, the emotional vulnerability. She didn't want to rush him. She wanted to guide him gently, just as he tried to guide her. Little did they know their assumptions about each other, his belief that she needed teaching and her belief that he needed space, would soon meet on one single night. A night that would bring both confusion and clarity, both surprise and understanding. It wouldn't break them, but it would change them. And it would show Luke that Emily wasn't the sheltered bride he imagined. She was the gentle strength he never knew he needed. The evening of their first night as husband and wife began in the softest possible way. After the small wedding celebration in the ranch's backyard, the guests slowly left, offering warm hugs and simple blessings as they walked toward their cars. Emily collected the empty plates and cups while Luke folded the chairs. They didn't speak much, but their silence was peaceful. It was the kind of quiet that comes after a long day filled with emotions, smiles, and new beginnings. By the time everything was cleaned up, the sky outside had turned a deep blue, sprinkled with stars. The air was cool. The wind was gentle. It felt like the world itself was holding its breath, waiting to see how their new life would begin. Inside the house, Emily walked around softly, touching the flowers guests had left on the table, smoothing her hands over the back of the couch, and feeling a new kind of warmth settle in her chest. This was her home now, the place where she would wake up and fall asleep for years to come. It felt comforting and strange at the same time. Luke moved through the house quietly, as if unsure what to do next. He didn't want to make Emily uncomfortable by rushing anything. He wanted everything to feel natural, gentle, and respectful. Still, a certain nervousness clung to him like dust on his boots. He was used to being confident in physical work, carrying heavy hay bales, guiding horses, fixing fences. But emotional closeness required a different kind of confidence, one he wasn't sure he had. Emily noticed the tension in him, though he tried to hide it. She had always been observant. She could sense when someone was uneasy even before they said a word. And tonight she felt that Luke's calmness had small cracks running through it, like someone trying to steady themselves while standing on shaking ground. After washing the last dish, Emily dried her hands and turned toward him. "Everything looks nice," she said softly. Luke nodded. "Yeah, it does." Their eyes met for a moment, and an unexpected blush rose on both their faces. For weeks they had talked about marriage, shared dreams, shared responsibilities, and shared laughter. But now the reality of being married, truly married, felt different. It felt more real, more fragile, more intimate. Emily moved first, stepping a little closer. "Are you tired?" she asked, her voice low and gentle. "A little," Luke answered honestly. "It was a long day." "Long," she agreed softly, "but beautiful." He smiled at that, a small, shy smile that made her heart flutter. The house felt extra quiet now, and even the floor seemed to know not to creak under their feet. Emily brushed her thumb across her wedding band, admiring the simple gold circle that symbolized her new life. She was nervous, too, not in a frightened way, but in the way someone feels before an important conversation. She wanted their marriage to start with understanding, honesty, and emotional closeness. Luke, however, felt nervous for a different reason. He had always imagined that he would guide Emily through this part of their marriage. He thought she would look to him for direction, for reassurance, for knowledge. In his mind, she was the gentle, innocent one, untouched by deep experiences. He believed he needed to be ready, strong, and sure. But he didn't feel sure. He felt unprepared. Not because he lacked affection, but because he had never experienced a moment like this either. He had no idea how to talk about it. And Luke Henderson, who could work from sunrise to sunset without complaining, suddenly felt as unsure as a young boy trying to understand something too big for him. When Emily reached out and gently touched his arm, Luke froze slightly, a tiny, almost unnoticeable stiffness. But she noticed it. "Luke," she said softly, tilting her head. "Are you okay?" He nodded a bit too quickly. "I'm fine, just tired." Emily gave a soft smile. "We don't have to rush anything tonight, you know that, right?" Her words were simple, but they hit his heart in a way he couldn't explain. Emily wasn't afraid. Emily wasn't confused. Emily wasn't expecting him to lead everything. Instead, she was offering him comfort, the very comfort he thought he was supposed to offer her. Luke felt his throat tighten. He suddenly felt small, exposed, and deeply unsure of himself. Everything he thought he was supposed to be, confident, experienced, knowledgeable, slipped from his grasp. He wanted to say something honest, something true. But the words were tangled inside him. Emily, noticing his discomfort, led him toward the couch. They sat side by side, hands touching but not fully intertwined yet. She took a quiet breath and turned slightly toward him. "I want us to talk," she said gently. "I think communication is important for us." Luke swallowed. That word, communication, felt heavy because it was the one thing he struggled with most. Emily continued, her voice warm and patient. "I know tonight is special, but it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be honest." Luke's fingers tightened around the edge of the cushion. I don't know what to say, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. You don't have to have perfect words, Emily reassured. Just share what you feel. He looked down at his hands. I thought I was supposed to lead. I thought I should know what to do, how to make everything right. Emily's eyes softened with understanding. Why do you think you have to know everything? He hesitated. Because I'm the husband. Emily's heart softened even more. She reached for his hand, holding it gently. Being a husband doesn't mean you have to be fearless or perfect. It means being honest. It means being patient. It means learning together. Luke's shoulders slowly loosened at her words. No one had ever told him that learning together was allowed, that he didn't have to pretend or act or appear wiser than he was. Emily shifted slightly closer, her expression tender. I want us to talk openly about what we're comfortable with and what makes us nervous. I want us to trust each other with those feelings. Luke looked at her, genuinely surprised. You're not scared? Emily shook her head. No, I'm a little nervous, maybe, but I prepared myself emotionally before marriage. I read, I learned, I talked with trusted people. I know how important communication is. This shocked Luke. He had assumed she was inexperienced in every way, but here she was emotionally ready, calm, and supportive. Her innocence wasn't lack of knowledge. It was purity of intention, sincerity of heart. Emily wasn't fragile. She was steady, she was grounded. She was wise in ways Luke had never expected. Luke felt his breath catch, not from fear of her, but from fear of disappointing her. He hadn't prepared himself the way she had. He hadn't read, asked questions, or learned anything about emotional closeness. He always thought he could simply rely on instinct, but now he realized that instinct wasn't enough. Emily noticed his silence and gently brushed his arm. Luke, it's okay. We don't have to do anything tonight that feels overwhelming. I just want us to be on the same page. I want you to feel safe with me. Safe. No one had ever said those words to him before. I don't want to disappoint you, he said quietly. Emily's expression softened like warm light. You could never disappoint me by being honest. Luke's chest tightened with emotion. He wasn't used to expressing himself. He wasn't used to vulnerability. But Emily wasn't pushing, she was inviting. There was a difference, and Luke felt it deeply. He took a breath, a long, shaky breath. I'm nervous, he whispered. Emily smiled gently. Thank you for telling me. That means a lot to me. He lowered his gaze. I thought I was supposed to teach you things. I thought you'd expect that from me. Emily shook her head softly. We're here to teach each other. It's not one person leading the other, it's two people growing together. Luke slowly looked up, meeting her eyes. They were warm, patient, and full of trust. Emily continued speaking in that same gentle tone. We don't have to rush anything tonight. We can just talk, or we can hold hands, or we can sit here quietly. There is no pressure. Her words felt like a blanket being gently placed over his worry. Luke nodded slowly, relief washing over him like soft rain. Emily leaned her head against his shoulder, and Luke allowed himself to relax for the first time that evening. They sat like that for a long time, not saying much, simply breathing together. The tension slowly melted from his chest, replaced by a softer, warmer feeling, one he had never felt before. It wasn't fear. It wasn't confusion. It was trust. Emily had taught him something without trying to control him. She had shown him that vulnerability wasn't weakness. It was a bridge between two hearts. After a while, Emily lifted her head and whispered, Luke, I'm here with you, always. He nodded, emotion building in his voice. Thank you. Their first night didn't unfold the way Luke had imagined when he pictured married life. It wasn't filled with bold confidence or perfect understanding. Instead, it was filled with gentle learning, soft communication, and honesty. It wasn't the night he expected. But it was the night they needed. A night that revealed Emily's quiet strength. A night that revealed Luke's hidden fears. A night that showed their marriage would require patience, closeness, and emotional growth. Neither of them realized it yet, but this moment, this soft, uncertain moment, would become the foundation of a deeper connection. A connection built not on assumptions, but on truth. In the days that followed their first night, the ranch looked the same. The mountains stood the same, and the sun rose with the same quiet glow. But inside Luke and Emily's home, something felt slightly different, not broken, not damaged, but stretched, like a thread pulled just a little too tight. Enough to feel it, but not enough to snap. Emily woke up each morning with hope that things would fall into a natural rhythm again. She cooked breakfast, folded laundry, swept the wooden floors, and tried to fill the silence with small smiles. She wasn't angry, and she certainly wasn't disappointed. She understood that intimacy, emotional or otherwise, required patience. She had always believed that trust took time to grow, like a seed that needed warmth, attention, and gentle care. But she couldn't ignore that Luke was quieter than usual. Normally, he offered a small smile when she handed him his morning coffee. Now, his smile barely appeared, as if it were hiding behind worry. Emily noticed the way he avoided her eyes when he returned from the barn, and how he sat on the far side of the couch in the evenings instead of next to her. Even his footsteps seemed different, slower, more uncertain, almost as if he felt he didn't belong in his own home anymore. Emily didn't take it personally. She didn't assume he was upset with her. Instead, she sensed something deeper, something inside him struggling, something he didn't yet know how to express. She waited patiently, giving him space, hoping the silence would loosen on its own. But silence has a strange way of growing heavier when left alone. Luke, meanwhile, wrestled with his thoughts as he worked on the ranch. He cared for the cows, repaired fences, washed tools, and carried hay, all the usual things he had done for years, but his mind refused to settle. Every time he remembered that first night, a tightness formed in his chest. He felt ashamed, not because anything wrong had happened, but because he had not lived up to the expectations he had built inside his own mind. He believed a husband was supposed to be strong, steady, and confident. He believed he should have known exactly what to do. He believed he had failed her, even though she had never said anything to make him feel that way. Emily's gentle guidance that night had surprised him. Her emotional readiness had caught him off guard. Instead of feeling proud of her maturity, Luke felt exposed and unprepared. He wasn't angry at her. He was disappointed in himself. But he didn't know how to tell her that, so he retreated into silence. Work became his escape. He stayed outside longer than necessary, checking the barns twice, repairing things that didn't need repairing, and pretending he was too tired to talk when he finally came inside. He didn't mean to shut her out, he simply didn't know how to let her in. Emily tried to create small moments of connection. She made his favorite meals. She brought him lemonade while he worked outside. She left little notes on the kitchen table, hoping one might draw him into a conversation. But Luke thanked her quietly and went right back to being distant. One evening, Emily sat on the porch while Luke worked later than usual. She watched the sky dim slowly, colors fading from orange to pink to blue. She thought about her marriage and how she wanted it to be strong, soft, and full of honest understanding. She believed deeply in kindness and patience, but she also knew when something needed to be addressed. Luke wasn't avoiding her because he didn't care. He was avoiding her because he cared too much, because he feared hurting her, disappointing her, or revealing something vulnerable. Emily's heart softened at the thought. When Luke finally approached the house, the sun had long set. He walked toward the porch with slow steps, his shoulders heavy with the weight of his thoughts. Emily stood up and opened the door for him. "You worked late," she said softly. He nodded without meeting her eyes. "Had things to finish." She knew he hadn't. She knew the ranch didn't require all that extra time, but she didn't challenge him yet. She followed him inside quietly. Luke washed up, then sat at the table for dinner. Emily had cooked a warm meal, but the air felt cold with unspoken words. They ate quietly, each bite echoing louder than it should have. Halfway through his meal, Luke set down his fork, looked at his plate, and said, "I'm sorry I've been quiet." Emily put her fork down as well, giving him her full attention. "It's okay," she said gently, though her eyes showed worry. "But I'd like to understand, not to judge you, but to support you." Luke looked conflicted, as if trying to choose between hiding and finally speaking. He wiped his hands on a napkin, took a deep breath, and finally whispered, "I don't know how to talk about it." Emily reached across the table, her hand open. "We can talk about anything," she said softly. "You don't have to be perfect for me." Her words shook him. Luke let out a breath he didn't even know he had been holding. "I thought I failed you," he finally said. "That night I froze, you were calm, you knew how to talk, you knew what to say, and I felt unprepared." Emily's expression warmed. She squeezed his hand gently. "Luke, I wasn't confident because I knew everything. I was confident because I trust you, and I wanted us to start with communication, that's all." Luke lowered his eyes, ashamed. "I thought I was supposed to guide you. I thought men were supposed to lead, and I didn't." Emily moved around the table, kneeling beside his chair so she could look up into his eyes. "Being a leader doesn't mean you never feel unsure," she whispered. "It means you're willing to be honest. You led by being gentle. You led by being patient. That means more to me than anything else." Luke's eyes softened, but confusion still lingered. But I didn't do what a husband is supposed to do. Emily shook her head firmly. A husband isn't supposed to be a hero every moment. He's supposed to be a partner. Someone who grows with his wife, not ahead of her. Her voice was warm but steady, filled with truth and tenderness. Luke swallowed. I didn't know how to tell you I was scared. Emily's heart nearly broke at the vulnerability in his voice. She reached up and brushed a loose strand of hair from his forehead. Thank you for telling me now. That means more than anything you could have forced yourself to be. Luke's shoulders slumped with relief. For the first time in days, he felt the heavy weight inside him begin to loosen. Emily stood up, guiding him gently toward the couch. They sat side by side, and she rested her hand on his chest, feeling the slow rhythm of his breathing. You thought I needed you to be strong, she said, but I needed you to be honest, that's all. Luke nodded slowly. I didn't want you to think I wasn't enough. Emily shook her head firmly. You are enough, you always have been, but we can't build a marriage on silence. We have to talk even when it's hard. Her words weren't sharp. They were soft, warm, full of understanding. Luke admired how she could speak truth without hurting him. It was one of the many things he loved about her. He took her hand, holding it with a new kind of tenderness. I'm sorry I shut you out, Emily smiled gently. I know you weren't trying to. I know you were trying to protect yourself and maybe even me. He nodded, grateful she understood. Emily continued softly, but when you walk away from me, I feel like I've done something wrong. And that hurts. Luke's eyes widened with regret. I didn't want to hurt you, I just didn't know what to say. I know, Emily whispered. That's why we need to talk, not just about our first night, but about everything, our fears, our hopes, our feelings, all of it. Luke nodded slowly, realizing she was right. Silence had been his shield for years, but in marriage it could become a wall she didn't deserve. Emily leaned her head on his shoulder, letting him breathe in the closeness without pressure. Luke, I'm not going anywhere. We're in this together. Her words melted the last of his fear. He placed his arm around her, pulling her gently closer. Thank you for being patient with me, Emily smiled. We promise to be patient with each other, that's what marriage is. Luke took a deep breath, finally feeling warmth return to his chest. They sat like that for a long time, not needing to say anything more. The silence between them had changed. It was no longer heavy or cold. It was connected. It was shared. It was peaceful. That night they didn't fix everything instantly. Healing doesn't happen in a single moment. But they took an important step, the first real step toward understanding each other deeply. Luke learned that he didn't need to be perfect. Emily learned that her gentle honesty could guide him when he felt lost. Together, they learned that communication was the heart of their relationship. Little by little, conversation returned to the house. Luke began sharing small things, his worries about the ranch, his childhood memories, his uncertainties. Emily listened with the same warm patience she had always shown. And in return, she shared her own vulnerabilities, her dreams, her hopes for their future. Their connection grew stronger, woven with new threads of trust and understanding. Luke realized Emily wasn't someone to guide from a distance. She was someone to walk beside him, hand in hand, heart to heart. Their marriage was still new, still fragile in some ways. But now it was built on something stronger than assumptions. It was built on truth. The days after their first difficult night passed slowly, but they passed with new understanding. Luke and Emily had begun to discover something important. Marriage was not about perfection, or about knowing everything, or about following expectations. Marriage was about patience, trust, and growing together. Each day, they tried to listen to one another more carefully, to notice the little signs of worry or joy, and to respond with kindness rather than pride. Luke found himself opening up in ways he had never imagined possible. He shared stories from his childhood, about growing up on the ranch, about the summers he spent learning to ride horses, and about the quiet nights when he would sit alone under the stars and dream of a family. At first, he spoke slowly, carefully choosing words as though they were fragile objects that could break. Emily listened, her eyes soft and full of attention, her hand resting on his arm or shoulder. Her presence alone encouraged him to speak more freely. For Emily, this was a revelation. She had always known Luke was thoughtful, but hearing him speak about his life, his fears, and his dreams allowed her to see him in a new light. She realized that his quiet demeanor was not a lack of feeling, but a deep, considered nature that protected both himself and those he loved. She respected his honesty and encouraged it gently, never rushing him, never interrupting, never judging. As the weeks turned into months, their life together began to settle into a gentle rhythm, but it was no longer predictable or simple. Instead, it was rich with shared moments, small lessons, and mutual understanding. Luke would wake early, as he always had, to tend to the animals and the fields, but now Emily would occasionally accompany him. She would feed the chickens, collect eggs, and even learn how to mend small fences under his careful guidance. Luke taught her, but he also learned from her curiosity, her attention to detail, and her ability to see things he had long taken for granted. Emily loved these mornings. She loved the way the sun felt warm on the fields, the sound of horses neighing softly in the distance, and the simple satisfaction of doing a job together with Luke. But more than anything, she loved watching Luke grow more relaxed in her presence. He no longer carried the heavy weight of fear from that first night. Instead, he began to trust her completely, allowing her to see him as he truly was, not as the man he thought he needed to be. Evenings became a time of quiet reflection. They would sit on the porch swing, watching the sunset paint the sky with shades of pink, orange, and gold. Sometimes they spoke of their day, of small successes and minor challenges. Sometimes they simply sat in silence, the kind of silence that felt comfortable, not tense. And sometimes they talked about their future, the home they wanted to build, the children they hoped to raise, and the life they wished to share. One particular evening, Luke surprised Emily by setting a small table on the porch, complete with a simple dinner and candles. The gesture was quiet, thoughtful, and entirely him. Emily's eyes widened and she laughed softly, her heart warming. "I don't need candles," she said gently, "but this is lovely." Luke shrugged, smiling slightly. "I just thought it would be nice to do something different." They ate together under the stars, talking about nothing and everything at once. Luke shared small memories from his youth, and Emily spoke of her hopes for her students and the dreams she had for their life together. The conversation flowed naturally, without pressure, without expectation. In that moment, Luke realized something profound. Emily was not someone he needed to guide entirely, nor was she someone who depended on him to be flawless. She was his partner, equal in patience, wisdom, and understanding. This realization changed everything for Luke. The fear and pressure he had carried dissolved into something new, a sense of freedom and confidence that came not from control, but from trust. He no longer felt that he had to perform or teach. He only needed to be present, to listen, to share, and to grow alongside Emily. Their first night together had been a challenge, yes, but it had also been a turning point. It had shown Luke that intimacy was not about knowing everything, but about being willing to learn. It had shown him that vulnerability was not weakness, but a bridge to true closeness. And it had shown him that Emily's quiet strength was not a threat, but a gift. Emily, too, had grown from their experiences. She learned that patience was not simply waiting for someone to change, but actively supporting and understanding them in the moment. She learned that communication was a skill that required practice, courage, and honesty. She discovered that love was not about avoiding discomfort or fear, but about facing it together. And perhaps most importantly, she learned that a partnership could be stronger than any individual, because it was built on shared respect and mutual care. Their bond deepened over time, strengthened by small acts of kindness, gestures of thoughtfulness, and quiet conversations. Luke began leaving small notes for Emily, a reminder that he was thinking of her, a simple good morning, or an encouragement when he knew she had a busy day ahead. Emily responded with equal warmth, leaving her own notes, small gifts, or even just a comforting smile when she saw him first thing in the morning. These small, intentional moments created a web of connection that neither of them had expected, but both cherished deeply. They also learned to navigate disagreements with care. When small misunderstandings arose, whether about chores, schedules, or preferences, they addressed them calmly, without anger or blame. Luke learned to express his feelings clearly, and Emily learned to listen fully before responding. They found humor in minor mistakes and celebrated each other's efforts. Over time, this pattern of communication became a foundation for their marriage, a tool that helped them grow closer rather than drift apart. One afternoon, a storm rolled over the ranch. Dark clouds filled the sky, and rain began to fall steadily. Luke and Emily worked together to secure the barns and animals, laughing as they rushed through puddles and slippery paths. The storm, which might have been stressful on its own, became a shared adventure. By the time it ended, they were soaked, laughing and tired but happy. Luke realized that life's challenges, the storms, the unexpected moments, were far easier to face when Emily was by his side. As weeks became months, the ranch itself seemed to reflect the changes in their marriage. The fields thrived under their care, the animals were well tended, and the house became warmer, more inviting, and full of life. Friends and neighbors noticed the difference, commenting on how natural and strong their partnership appeared. Luke and Emily, however, didn't notice the attention. They were too focused on each other, on their growth, and on the quiet, everyday magic of building a life together. One evening, as they sat on the porch swing watching the stars, Emily spoke softly. "Luke, do you remember our first night?" Luke smiled faintly. "How could I forget?" Emily laughed softly, leaning her head on his shoulder. "I just want you to know that night didn't scare me. It didn't make me doubt anything. It made me realize how much I care for you and how important it is that we face life honestly together." Luke's chest tightened with emotion. "I was so afraid I'd disappoint you." Emily reached up and brushed his cheek. "You could never disappoint me, Luke, not ever. You just had to be willing to share yourself, and now you do." Luke leaned his head against hers, feeling warmth spread through him. He realized that love wasn't about perfection or control or knowledge. It was about presence, patience, honesty, and trust. Emily had taught him that in her quiet way, and he had learned to meet her in return. Time continued to pass, and their life together grew richer with each day. They celebrated small victories, like a successful harvest or a new calf born on the ranch. They shared quiet moments, like watching the sunrise with coffee in hand or reading together on rainy afternoons. They explored the countryside, visited friends in nearby towns, and attended small community events, always side by side. Luke and Emily also dreamed together. They spoke of children, of building additions to the ranch house, of planting a garden that would grow food and memories alike. They planned trips to see the mountains in winter, lakes in summer, and forests in autumn. But even these dreams were grounded in reality, in the love and patience they had learned to share daily. Looking back on their journey, both understood how far they had come. The first night, which had seemed overwhelming and uncertain, had been the beginning of everything. It had tested their assumptions, revealed their vulnerabilities, and shown them the importance of communication. But it had also shown them the depth of their care, the strength of their patience, and the quiet power of their love. Luke had learned that guiding someone did not mean controlling them. It meant walking beside them, listening, learning, and sharing. Emily had learned that patience and understanding could reach hearts even when fear or doubt was present. Together, they had built a foundation that could withstand life's challenges, not because it was perfect, but because it was real. And so their marriage blossomed, not in dramatic gestures or grand declarations, but in small, everyday moments, in laughter, in shared chores, in quiet conversations, and in the gentle comfort of knowing they were not alone. Luke and Emily had learned that love was not about completing each other, but about growing together day by day, moment by moment, hand in hand. By the end of that year, they were no longer just husband and wife in title. They were partners in life, companions in thought, and friends in every sense. The ranch, once just a place of work, had become a home of warmth, laughter, and love. And the lessons they had learned about patience, communication, trust, and shared growth would guide them through all the years to come. Luke often thought back to that first night, not with fear or regret, but with gratitude. It had been difficult, yes, but it had been the moment that started their journey toward real understanding. And Emily, too, remembered that night not as a challenge, but as the turning point where she realized just how strong, gentle, and loving her husband truly was. Together, they faced the world as a team. Together, they built a life filled with respect, care, and tenderness. Together, they discovered the true meaning of love, not in perfection, not in assumptions, not in control, but in honesty, patience, and the quiet courage to grow alongside one another. And in that life, they found not just happiness, but completeness. Not just comfort, but connection. Not just love, but a bond that would carry them forward, forever learning, forever patient, and forever together.